All right, so this is installation for the K&N Typhoon intake filter or intake system for the 2018 Nissan Maxima. So if your engine looks like this, these are instructions for installation. First step we're going to do is take these two bolts out, this one and this one. I'm not sure if there's one in the back here somewhere secured to the air box, but we'll see. Yep, so that's all. These are only two bolts that need to come out. So set this aside. Next thing is take the crankcase vent hose off here. That's held on. It's the crankcase vent right here. There's a hose here, and you can see is the spring clamp on that. And before anything, actually, I should have mentioned first, you're supposed to disconnect the negative battery cable for safety reasons. You don't ever want to work on the car with the negative battery cable connected. So next is to disconnect the mass air sensor electrical connection, which is right here at the back of the air box, between the intake tube and the air box. So that's just a simple squeeze and unplug. Now we got an air box retaining bolt, which if you come back here, that's right there. All right, set that guy aside. Now that bolt's out, so next thing we're gonna do is loosen up the band clamp that's connecting the intake tube to the air box. And for that, you'll need, I want to say that's an 8mm or a flathead screwdriver. I'm gonna use a flathead. We're also gonna have to disconnect the clip that's holding the mass airflow sensor connection to the air box. Use the pliers to do that. And there's a small vacuum line here at the bottom. Disconnect. It's a vent hose, I believe. And here's your air box. Don't want to throw this away in case you ever have to go back to stock. I'm gonna take off the intake hose. Now with the air box and intake tube are out, you gotta take these two grommets out that are the mounting, positioning, locating, whatever you want to call them, rubber grommets for the air box. They're just stuck into two holes here. One comes out, and then the one in front, you can see here, this one also comes out. Set those aside. Then we're going to come to the bottom left bolt on the throttle body right here. That's a 5mm Allen head. That needs to come out. And you might as well keep that bolt in your hand because we're going to come right back in with this L-shaped mounting bracket here that comes in the kit. And that's going to go with the bent tab against the throttle body. Now I'm not so sure we need to go ahead and tighten this down already until we get everything positioned correctly. So I'm just going to snug this so that it can still be moved. Right, that's just snug now. Don't forget about that, it needs to be tightened all the way down. Next we're going to come to the heat shield. And I've already started this here. You can see you install the rubber edge trim here, and it comes in longer than you need it. So that's going to need to be cut off at the appropriate length. There. So now we got the rubber grommet or rubber liner installed here. Then you'll also want to take, I've already started it, but there's another bracket, an L-shaped bracket that comes in the kit. And you want to install that with one of the spacers that's included up against the shield, and then a flat washer on the outside, 10mm bolt going through, and then lock washer and nut on the outside. All that hardware is included. So right now we're at this step. Install the shorter rubber mounted stud onto the rear airbox mounting bracket. And we want to put a large fender washer on each side of the mounting bracket. These two rubber grommets here they're talking about, and obviously one is shorter than the other, right? And this is going in place of the two rubber mounts that we just took out. So this one goes on the rear, and I have washer, rubber mount, and another fender washer on the bottom, then the lock nut, and our 10mm. And this is where the 10mm wrench comes into play. Now we're going to take the longer of the two rubber studs. Again, 2 more fender washers, and lock nut and lock washer. Mount, fender washer underneath. We're installing the intake duct, the same 2 screws that we took out earlier in the first step. Just 2 screws. Next, we're going to take the mass air sensor out of the stock air box, and that's something they don't tell you, so you actually do need Phillips head for that. Just 2 screws here on the stock air box, right here at the tube. Be very careful not to touch this at all with your hands, because it's a very sensitive sensor, and the oils from your skin can throw that off. So do not touch this. And these screws can go right back in here. And this goes in just like this. It's shown in the photo. And we have 2 screws in the kit. Next step, we have 2 silicone hoses in the kit. As you can see, one is stepped, where it has like an adapter look to it. The other one is straight. You can use the straight one and install that on the throttle body with the included hose clamps. So next, the Typhoon intake tube is going to go in. Alright, so I had to stop for a second there, but basically we lined up the intake tube with the L-shaped mounting bracket. Not L-shaped, that's the L-shaped one, but the one for the throttle body, and that bolts up from underneath. So we just threw a 10mm bolt and lock washer into that, and we tightened down this one. This one we left loose initially till we got this seated in the correct position. So now we're going to tighten that down. And also, as a side note, I was wondering what this other piece of trim was for, rubber trim was for, and instructions don't even tell you this, but you need to install that around the heat shroud. So, and that gets trimmed the same way as you trim this one. And you can still install that if you're at this point now and you forgot to put that on. You can still install it with the heat shield in place. You don't have to take this off. We're gonna go ahead and tighten down the front hose clamp on the throttle body connection. Next step, we have this hose that comes in the kit with the hose mender. Hose mender goes in one side. This actually just slides onto the factory, the mended side. It goes into the factory crankcase vent hose, and then the open end goes on the intake tube. So this is the one we initially took off that had the spring clamp on it. So that guy goes in there. This side goes in here, or on here. And then we're gonna clamp our hose back down. Yeah, right back in the same position. And that other larger silicone hose, the large end, goes onto the venturi. Make sure that's fully seated. It comes all the way up to the step of the adapter here. And that gets its own hose, or clamp, I mean. Okay, then we're gonna grab the K&N filter. All right, back again. So we're just gonna throw this one factory bolt that we took out back into its original position. Next, we place the venturi, or adapter as some people call it, into the K&N filter. Then make sure that all your band clamps are facing the same direction as per the orientation that the filter would be in the car, so that you don't want to put the screws facing the firewall because you won't be able to get to them as easily. So we're going to put them all facing this way because this is how the intake goes in. We're going to tighten down the clamp. And we'll come around. Slide that to a place where we can always access it. We're all finished. That's tight. We're gonna plug the mask back in. We'll just tuck that wire down there. So these are the parts you should have left over now at this point. Is your intake tube with the resonator tube for assembly and the factory air box. All that's left is to connect this negative battery terminal. Now it's going to give it a test start. Make sure we don't have any leaks. Good induction sound. Sounds good. No leaks or anything like that. We're good to go. And there it is. K&N Typhoon install for the 2018 Nissan Maxima V6.